You know what's kind of crazy is that this is my 7th video already that I've uploaded in regards to MLB The Show 22. I've been enjoying making them. You guys have been watching them, so I appreciate that. Now let's get into another video, and today's is talking about pitching tips. Now I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to like get 100% accuracy every time, because more than anything, man, like this accuracy stuff is literally just repetition. Like I could tell you timing mechanics, I could tell you do this, do that, but honestly literally all it is seeing that mimicked arrow where it goes through the sequence and it rips it down like that. That's showing the exact timing that perfect timing is. So now when I come here, like I had 96%, a little bit off. It's dictated as a perfect, for example, but I mean, my number one advice on that is repetition. You got to play the game to get better at pinpoint. It took me about 2 or 3 weeks last year to feel like fully get 100% on every release. But what I more so wanted to talk about today is pitch selection, why you throw certain pitches in certain places, certain approaches, and what pitches are the best, what pitches are the worst, etc. So I'm on Blake Trinan for a reason, because he's regarded as one of the best relievers in MLB The Show. One, because he has a pretty good release point, but also he has the meta pitches, the sinker, the slider, the cutter. Primarily the sinker and the cutter. Those two pitches are like the number one creme de la creme pitches you go to in MLB The Show. And I want to first talk about the sinker, because there was a nerf to sinkers this year. So if we look at the par, okay, it goes away fast. Can I make it so that doesn't go away? Okay, I figured it out. So now let's talk about the sinker. So first of all, if you notice, as you move the ball up in the zone, the par will get bigger. If you don't know what I mean by par, it's that hollowed, or not hollowed, it's the shaded circle around the baseball. So what this means is that within that region, if you throw a perfect release, it will fall within that region. So let's test it right here. So I have it jammed to the corner. Now I had a horrible pitch there, but let's try it again. Now I have it jammed to the corner, and that's about a perfect release. I spiked it a little bit too low, or spiked it a little bit too fast. But when we're looking at these pitches, we're in the destination they're supposed to be thrown to. That is where they'll have the smallest par. So you throw a sinker upstairs? You can, absolutely. But even if we get a pretty solid release, it ends up going perfectly there, which is, I feel like, they're going to be working on fixes, so it looks like it ends up perfect there. It won't be the case like that. They are literally putting out an update tomorrow, so it's probably going to fix a lot of those stabilities. But overall, I've noticed with pinpoint, it's a lot more difficult online if you don't nail it 100% to dictate where it goes. So first of all, in talking about sinkers, the biggest places and the meta really that we found, we being the community, for placing these pitches on the sinker, first of all, is let's imagine you're facing a right-handed batter. So we have a right-handed batter. So when you're pitching to righties, the number one thing that I would say with a sinker, now again, with my advice, just because I tell you to do something, don't throw that 100% of the time, because people will pick up on that tendency. I could go on a bigger tangent on tunneling and sequencing in another video if you guys want. I kind of just want to go bare bones basics here though. So with the sinker, when I'm throwing to a righty, I'm thinking about throwing it on this low and right hand corner. I'm thinking about throwing this low and left, or low and inside corner. But the creme de la creme spot you go to is anywhere along this region here. Like if you could draw a circle right here, this is the sweet spot for throwing a sinker. Primarily because with with the PCI anchor, and even just moving your PCI in general, it's really hard to get yourself in on this pitch, and sinkers move a ton on the inside half. So let me throw a sinker middle in right here. This is a really money spot to throw it. Bregman doesn't throw, and you noticed that I didn't have a perfect release, so it actually does not go exactly where I wanted to. That's a lot better of a release, and right there, it's a lot better of a location. But with 2 strikes, when you're thinking about throwing a sinker, you want to try and barrel it in on the hands a little bit more. You want to make them work for it. Now, I don't like that he got a back out animation there. You want to try and find in between that pitch and the strike zone with 2 strikes when you're at 0-2 or 1-2. When you get to 2-2 and 3-2, you got to get close to the zone and make them work for it. But I want to mention this too. Just because they nerfed the upstairs sinker does not mean I would stop throwing it. Like, has it been nerfed? Yes. Is it still much better than a fastball up the zone? Absolutely it is. And another thing with sinkers is I'm talking and throwing pinpoints. That usually doesn't work too well. But a great compliment to the sinker is the four-seam fastball, especially if you've been throwing a ton of sinkers. Like, if your opponent has been seeing you throw sinkers all game, let's say I know you've been jamming me with inside sinkers here all day, and it comes up to the 7th inning, and I know a sinker's coming. When you throw a four-seam fastball, they're gonna get... When you throw a four-seam fastball, they're going to get on top of the ball because they're going to think right on that release, hey, that's a fastball. And then it's going to drop and they'll be like, shoot, and then they'll pop it up, and then you will succeed on throwing a good four-seam fastball. And that's a little bit of tunneling there. But even when a lefty's at the plate, primarily the vibe on sinkers is that they work really well along the inside part of the strike zone from like just about near the top to just about near the bottom. Now, another thing with pitching, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people struggle with, is that the goal of pitching is to not throw every single pitch in the strike zone. You want to make your opponent work for it a lot. And that's why something I really like to do early in the game, I'll pick slider, for example. I love to put pitches like right here for like the first 3 innings. Unless you prove to me that you are going to be taking a considerable amount of pitches, I will not throw you anything. Like, I will live on the outside half of the zone, and if you take that once, great, but if you prove to me for a couple innings you do, now I got to come in a little bit more because now I got to get my strike. But closing on the sinker, one last zone that I experimented with last year, and I feel like I had some success with it. Now, this is a very situational pitch and location. So if it doesn't work for you, I'm sorry. But when you're in a battle, a long foul ball battle, I love to throw sinkers like for a lefty right here, or for a righty like right here. Now, you might be looking at me and be like, what in the F are you talking about? Like, you're putting a ball in the middle of the zone. I'm asking to give up a home run. So here's what I'm saying. People in long at bats and longer in the game in general are so accustomed to jamming their PCI along the strike zone because everybody knows that everybody's throwing at the corner of the strike zone, that if you come in a little bit, like right here, now you have to locate it. Like, this is, you have to be an expert in your location because, like I mentioned, if you miss your perfect here, it could end up right down the middle. It could end up right on the black, which is where they're already jamming their PCI to. So this is a very niche situational pitch. So when you're facing lefty, you want to throw it at this zone right here, righty, that zone right here. But that's just about it for talking about sinkers. Now talking on the cut fastball. So when we're facing left-handed batters, what I love to do, again, it's kind of the same philosophy as a sinker. I love to barrel in cutters on the inside half, about middle in once again, barrel it inside. And the goal of this is that if you throw it right here, it starts about here and it cuts to about right here. So you're making the batter have to make conscious decisions. The CPU floats it because I apparently didn't have a great accuracy on the cutter there. But you see, like, that ball's off the strike zone. I'm in the way. You see, that ball's off the strike zone. So in reality, it's a great pitch. CPU gets a home run. It literally looks like it's off the end of the bat. So hooray for Yordan Alvarez. But with the cut fastball, one thing that I love to do, but you gotta really be sparing when you throw this, is the backdoor cutter. I just got followed while I'm recording a video, so that's kind of dope. But throwing the backdoor cutter is one of the scariest pitches in this game because, to me, in a lefty, I'll put it here, in a lefty righty situation, if somebody has any idea that that's coming, it's so easy to jam your PCI down to that, and then you hit a perfect home run to left field. So a backdoor cutter is a great pitch to throw for strike one. It's a great pitch to throw on like 3 and 2. And let's talk about 3 and 2, for example. If we're facing a lefty batter in a 3-2 count and we want to try to throw a backdoor cutter because they know what's coming, I would go about right here. Because they know what's coming, and the goal of this is to get them to get out in front of that ball and then scoot it over the shortstop. So now going back to facing righties, I love throwing cutters up and inside. It's like one of my favorite spots to throw them. I also really like throwing cutters versus righties the same way as lefties. You try to extend that bat out of the strike zone, exactly as Bregman, the beautiful CPU, does right there. A final note on cutters as far as sequencing goes. Let's say that you've been doing this all game. You've been throwing cutters just in or just off the strike zone the entire game. A great way to fool your opponent is to then use the four-seam fastball and just confuse them. Now, I didn't locate it very well because I'm talking, but let me show you one right here. So perfect release, and it's still off the plate a little bit, but the point still stands that if they've been sitting cutter, now you throw something fast. If you locate it, you might get them looking for strike three. Now, talking about the slider is a very complimentary pitch. And it's really circumstantial because if we look at Blake Trinan, and I'll zoom in on the camera here, you have a sinker that can get up to 100, a cutter that can get up to 96, a four seam that can get up to 100, and a slider that's significantly slower. My general rule of thumb with sliders is that there is two sliders in this game. There's a DeGrom slider and a normal slider. And with a normal slider, your goal is to try and fool the batter. With a DeGrom slider, you're trying to burn them. I can't burn somebody with 89. I can't go middle in with a slower slider and try and loop this and break it over the corner. One, because it's just a scary pitch, because right there you see I barely missed my feedback and it went right down the middle. And any normal player that's somewhat good probably hits that out for a home run. But with a DeGrom slider, it comes in a lot harder. It's got a sharper bite. It's coming in at like 93, 94. You can really sneak that in there. But in regards to the slider, once again, we're throwing it softer. We want to do the same philosophy as the cutter, but we have a lot more of a range to do so. I love throwing sliders middle away because they initially break over the top of the strike zone, and the top of the strike zone usually gets batters enticed, and then they'll follow it the whole way, and then they'll just barely get the bat handle on it, roll it over to first or second, and you'll be chilling. And then another thing I like to do with sliders as well is go slider about middle low right here. This is a great pitch as well if you're trying to get a double play ball, like if you throw a sinker middle low. Now again, with all of this info, I'm not telling you this to do this every pitch. This is really circumstantial stuff that I'm trying to tell you, also trying to not like make this a 1 hour video. So you're not going to be using David Price online really, but let's use David Price as an example because we have to talk about the curveball. Now the curveball is, if I'm being honest, in regards to MLB The Show, is really one of the least thrown pitches in the game. It's just for many years, the curveball's just been a big looping home run waiting to happen, and I haven't really played that much. I mean, I've started playing on opening night. It's right now 10:02 p.m. on a Saturday when I'm recording this, so in reality, I've only played for about 2 days. But curveballs maybe become a part of the meta, maybe they don't, but if they do, let's strategize for it. So your goal of throwing a curveball should be either getting the batter out in front or making the batter chase something. So primarily when I'm thinking of throwing a curveball, this is when for a lot of at bats I've either led with some kind of a fastball like a cutter, a sinker, a four seam, two seam, whatever. Now I want to lead off with a curveball. So let's imagine that we're doing this. Let's imagine that we've been burying fastballs to start at bats, and now I want to come in with a curveball. What you don't want to do, lefty, lefty, please listen to me when I say this. Lefty, lefty. The worst thing you can do to lead off an at bat is throw any sort of off speed in this corner right here. A large majority of the community, including myself for that matter, has a tremendous difficulty hitting lefty lefty, and a lot of that is anything on the inside half. That's where a lot of the issues come from. If you allow the batter to extend their hands out a little bit more and wait a little bit longer on an off-speed pitch, you're asking for a perfect to left field. So do not lefty lefty really ever lead off with an off-speed pitch in this location. But let's go back to talking about the curveball. So if I'm lefty and I've been throwing a lot of fastballs, I like to lead off with like a middle in curveball here. One, this is probably something that they're just going to spit on right away. Now again, this David Price in the like practice mode doesn't have great stats, so even if I miss by a little bit, it won't really even go where I want it to, and that doesn't really go where I want it to. But the point is what we're talking about philosophy wise. And when you're expecting fastball and the first pitch you see is a big looping thing, you're gonna be like, all right, you know, let that go, 1-0 count, and then you drop it in and it's 0-1. Now you're already ahead and you got the batter a little bit confused. Other spots that are really successful on throwing the curveball to lefties, very rarely can you spike a curveball in the top half of the zone, especially with the nerfs to the par. It's gonna be really difficult to do that. Last year it was something that was a little bit used in 21, not so much this year. I tripped on my words there, but you guys know what I meant. But primarily curveballs low and out of the strike zone, and then low and out of the strike zone here. And then I like throwing them here too. This is kind of the same philosophy with sliders, is that it's traveling across the zone, it's enticing the batter, you might get them to get out in front and roll it over. And then I'll pick circle change here, but the philosophy still kind of stays the same when I'm talking about circle changes, in that the goal of fastballs is to get the batter to be late on it or blow the doors off them. The goal of off speed is to get them out in front and obviously roll it over or strike out, ground out, whatever. But when you sequence all these things correctly, you can really become a great pitcher. And you take some of the advice I talked about in this video, you're gonna do well. But I gotta tell you another thing, man. One of my favorite things about MLB The Show is learning on your own and learning from watching others. If you feel like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing in regards to pitching, click on my stream when I'm live. Or if I'm not live, go to the Twitch category in MLB The Show and pick somebody and just watch how they pitch. And another thing that's really important too, I'll see if I can make the CPU like swing at this for some reason. I don't know if they will be able to. I guess they won't. But a big thing that I was just going to mention is that you want to see how your opponent's reacting. If I throw a fastball, are they early? Are they late? If I throw off speed, are they early? Are they late? Are they well, now they took away PCI feedback, but you can still see, are they underneath the ball? Are they on top of the ball? Are they aggressive early in the count? Are they aggressive late in the count? That's why I really like to, in the first 2 innings of a ranked seasons game. Now, BR and events are a little bit different. That's basically like going in the wild, because like you have no time to scout your opponent. But in BR and events, I love to throw pitches off the black like this and just see how my opponent, you know, reacts. And a lot of people really consider the low part of the zone to be the meta right now. Nobody's really throwing it anywhere else, but I gotta tell you, with changeups too, they're really good middle in pitches, and really good pitches just like right on the black in general, man. You can really get people confused on that. But in this video I covered a ton of different pitches and where to throw them, lefty situations, righty situations, but there's still a lot more that can be talked about. I'm happy to answer any of those on stream. The link to my stream is below, but also the YouTube comment section is a great place, and I try to respond to as many comments as I can. So if you have questions, please feel free to let me know, and I thank you for watching this video. Please go watch the rest of them, but if you don't want to watch the rest of them and you just want to watch this, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.